Tone. Tone is certainly one of the most important attributes of a tubist. It can also be one of the most difficult to address in a meaningful way. There are some simple ideas that we will explore today, but developing a distinct voice as a tubist takes years to develop. I like to think of three phases of tone development: the concept, the production, and the refinement. In the concept phase, we will create an ideal image of our tone. In the production phase, we will develop skills that create these tones. And in the refinement phase, we reflect on how well the concept and production phases are working together. Let's start with concept. The most important thing to develop a good tone concept is to listen to great players. Many students are limited in the sounds that they produce because they have never actively listened to great sounds. There are so many great models available to students today, and I want students to explore the sound of many players to develop their own preferences. As a young player, my resources were limited. I had only 2 recordings, Roger Bobo and John Fletcher. Both recordings are exceptional, and I learned an amazing amount by listening to them hundreds of times. My preferences developed towards different aspects of those 2 players, specifically the general tone and flow of John Fletcher and the dramatic presentation of Roger Bobo. By fusing these 2 players together, I was developing a concept that was even more compelling. If we listen to many great players, we develop a library of great sounds that create an extraordinary resource for our tone concept. For me, the most vivid sound images in my mind were experienced in a live performance or lesson. I would encourage all aspiring musicians to take every opportunity to experience mature musicians in person. Going to concerts of soloists, chamber ensemble groups like brass quintets or large ensembles can be inspiring, and we can see how our individual sound can be applied in different contexts. The second phase to discuss is production. Knowing what to do physically to adjust sound takes control of many different fundamental skills, but none is more important than the breath. I would encourage you to watch my video on breathing to develop that skill. In the breath, I like to focus on a deep O sound as it encourages the most open passageway for the air. The throat is open and relaxed, and air meets no restriction, enabling the deepest and most filling breath. That open throat also serves as the foundation of a deep and rich tone. The O syllable lowers the tongue and allows air to flow unrestricted into the tuba. I struggled with the concept of opening the throat until I connected it to the open throat we experience in the breathing process. The O syllable not only is the most effective way to move air, but it also opens up the body to resonate. Compare the sound of our voice on O versus E, and you will see the extremes of resonances. O is in the chest and E is in the sinuses. The tuba simply amplifies these sounds, so I work to purify the sound inside my body. Personally, I feel the concept of voicing promoted by our woodwind colleagues has strong application on brass instruments. Not only does it help us understand how our throat works, but it opens us up to the spectrum of sounds rather than limiting us to just one tone color. Another area of concern is related to the relationship of air speed and air quantity. Good tone quality requires an appropriate amount of air that is moving at an appropriate speed. Some notes require a small amount of air that is moving very fast, while others may need a large amount of air that is moving very slowly. Typically, the lower the note, the slower the air. The higher the note, the faster the air. The louder the note, the more air, and the softer the note, the less air. These simplifications can be dangerous, though, as most of us have trouble telling the difference between air speed and air amount. We tend to equate these two simply because they feel so similar in our torso, but how that air interacts in the oral cavity and the embouchure will change everything related to airflow. Consider 2 different airflows by blowing into your hand. First, as if we are blowing on a spoonful of hot soup to cool it. The air moves very fast, but the lips only allow a small amount to be released. Now blow on your hands as if it's cold and you want to warm them. The air is moving much slower, but the amount of air released is large. The warm air, moving slowly, is great for low register production, while the fast, cool air is great in the upper register. I believe that tone production should be based on our quality of sound in the low register, which is why I encourage students to use the O syllable with slower, warm air as a default setting. Once a stable and resonant sound is established here, we increase airspeed and manipulate the throat and oral cavity to conform to the demands of the music in other registers. As the student seeks to refine the tone, I would encourage a few specific exercises. Long tones are essential, but I encourage them to be used in a melodic passage. Legendary teacher Arnold Jacobs used the following exercise and referred to it as the beautiful sound study. You can find a copy of this exercise in my warm-up packet, available for free on my website. By thinking musically, a long tone is transformed and the player naturally works towards beauty of tone. This exercise also connects tone across a range of an octave, which requires the player to match tone throughout ranges. The best tones are fluid and are able to cover the spectrum of musical demands rather than being isolated or static. Another exercise, and perhaps the most successful tool I have seen as a teacher, is the use of buzzing on the mouthpiece alone. The exercise demands solid embouchure, appropriate airspeed, and oral recognition. As you buzz, I would encourage you to strive for an appropriate sound that is obviously very different than playing the tuba. The sound will have a centered core, but will also be accompanied by the sound of rushing air. When buzzing, the combination of the core sound and the rushing air creates a sound that I think sounds fuzzy. This should take a lot of air, and it also creates a noticeable resonance in the throat and chest that you can feel by placing your hand on your throat or on your chest. The more resonance you feel in the chest, the more resonant the tone will be. The final exercise is an easy one. Record yourself. When we listen to our recordings, we can reflect more easily on what we are doing than in real time. We are not distracted by what is required for production and can concentrate on our critique. It also allows us to see progress over a longer period of time and how our tone concept evolves. Again, realize that tone is something that we work on continuously. We should always be reinforcing our tone concept by listening to others, working on our fundamental technique, and reflecting on ourselves to ensure that we are true to our own voice. Thanks for watching.